Hello, everybody. I thought I'd briefly talk to you about the California Gold Rush. After the Mexican-American War, California, what is now the state of California, became the part of the United States of America. It was part of the purchase at the end of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And remember, the United States had wanted to purchase part of California already so they could have access to San Diego Harbor so they could have a better chance with the China trade. They did not know about the gold that was in California. Nobody did. I mean, there were some Native Americans that would sometimes show up with a little bit of gold jewelry or adornment, but nobody suspected there was as much gold as there was. So what happened? Some soldiers that had been released from the United States Army wanted to go home, but they were broke. And so they took a job cutting a sluice, which is a temporary creek or an artificial creek that you use to run a sawmill at a place called Sutter's Mill. And they were working and they uncovered a bunch of shiny, pretty yellow rocks. And the foreman looked at him and said, "Hey, isn't this like a holiday or something? Why don't y'all take the rest of the day off?" Right? Because he saw it and thought, "Well, I think this is gold." All right, so he picks it up and he does a couple of different tests on it. He comes to the conclusion that it is in fact gold. And he and the guy who owned the land, Sutter, are originally going to keep the secret to themselves. But that's going to be really, really hard. For one, if you've got gold, if you got all these workers there, sooner or later these workers are going to look down and they're going to see the gold. And so you got to figure out what to do about that. But the bigger problem was that the one guy was an idiot. There's a saying in the military, loose lips sink ships, right? Well, they decided they were going to celebrate their discovery of gold, and they got stupid drunk. All right, now you know people who drink, then there's people who get drunk, and then there's people who get stupid drunk. And the reason I say that they were stupid drunk is because they get up there and they announce to everybody in the bar where all their gold is found, that it's found up there, there's gold in them there hills. And let me tell you, that bar cleared out really fast as everyone goes up there and now they know the gold is there. This is going to cause all sorts of problems in California. All right, not counting Native Americans, the population of California was only about 1,000 people in 1840. And that's counting these soldiers. And so there's not a whole lot of people in California trying to live in cities. And so, but by the end of 1840, that population had gone up to about 10,000, the San Francisco area. So imagine something like O'Donnell, the town just north of us, suddenly becoming the size of Lamesa or having the same number of people as Lamesa. And imagine the trouble that this would cause with housing, with sanitation, with providing basic services, environmental destruction, crime. Most of the people that are coming are men that kind of the rough and tumble kind of people. By the end of 49, the population is going to be closer to about 100,000. So the population of California goes from it basically doubles every few days, and this is going to cause huge stresses on the infrastructure. Add to that the people who were coming, many of them coming to California, coming along the California trails. They had this idea that they were going to come in and they were going to get rich quick. And so they weren't necessarily interested in building communities or bringing families and getting along with their neighbors. There was a lot of saloons, a lot of bars, a lot of laundresses. Laundresses, by the way, is a history euphemism for a prostitute sometimes. And so there was a lot of problems in the Bay Area and the Sacramento area looking for gold, all these people coming in. And to make matters worse, most people weren't getting rich. They were coming in. It doesn't take long because the President of the United States makes an announcement that, hey, they've discovered gold in California, and then now it's all on, and everyone's out there going out to California and everything like this, right? But whenever you have something this profitable, it's inevitable. This is America. Large businesses are going to get involved, and because of that, the the picture that we have of the lone miner standing up to his knees in the creek with the pan, sloshing it around and singing songs about the west wind and and Miner 49er and Clementine and stuff like this really isn't very accurate. And instead, they formed companies, and it wasn't long before some of these really large companies went and basically either pushed out or bought out or a little bit of both all of these smaller individuals. And before too long, they're the ones that are controlling all the gold production. The Statler Brothers, a country and western band that was big in the 50s and 1950s and 1960s and the 1970s in the United States, said it best. All the gold in California is in a bank in the middle of Beverly Hills in somebody else's name. Yeah. Okay, so businesses, they're banking. They're making a lot of money off of the gold rush. They are destroying the environment. They're pushing out Native Americans. They're pushing out farmer individual miners. They're pushing out. But nevertheless, the idea that you could come to California, that you could get rich quick, is going to persist. It's going to lead to this, again, this mass migration to California from the East Coast, from Europe, from Asia, from the Philippines, from all over. People from China are going to come to California. So people are going to come from China to make their fortune and then take it back to China. That's the plan. Many of them stay. Also going to come from the Philippines. They're going to come from, and this is going to have a huge effect on the United States. It's going to push the need for a transcontinental railroad. With California and the gold fields, people get that gold from the West Coast to the East Coast so it can be made into coinage for the United States. And in order to do that, it's difficult. It's dangerous to bandits and groups along the way. And so that's going to push for a transcontinental railroad, which, as we'll discuss next week, is going to really, really cause some problems with Kansas and Nebraska. It's also going to push for the need to build communication from East Coast to West Coast to try to integrate, because we don't want the West Coast becoming so wealthy, but at the same time so isolated from the East Coast that they don't have those ties, and it'd be too easy for the West Coast to spin away and take all that wealth with it. Also add to that, is going to really prove the need for a transisthmal canal. You could get to California from Europe by sailing. It's going to take you a few weeks to get from, say, Liverpool, England to Baltimore, Maryland, where you're going to get on a steamboat. You're going to come up. You're going to go around Baltimore. You're going to come over to New Orleans and up the Mississippi to St. Louis or to Council Bluffs, Iowa. And then you're going to get off that. You're going to buy a wagon if you can afford one, or you're going to walk with a handcart or something like this. And you're going to then spend the next 6 months walking across America to get to California. And so this is a long, arduous, and expensive journey. And so this is going to push a lot of people. They realize that it would be faster and about the same price if they would just go down to Panama, what's now the country of Panama. And then there was a train that would go from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean. They would catch the train, and they'd be across in a few hours. They would get on another steamboat, and then come on up to San Francisco. All right, and this really demonstrated how important Panama is going to be for transportation of goods. And then later, of course, you're going to add the military aspect. And so the United States is already going to begin thinking, we need some way to cross the Isthmus of Panama quickly, and we need to control it. And this is going to eventually lead more than 50 years later to the Panama Canal. And so you see the California gold rush is really changing, and it's kind of starting to set in motion some things that are going to come about. And it's also going to demonstrate something that's very important in America, and that is the brutal nature of capitalism. The law of supply and demand. All right, so these guys are coming over. They arrive, they get off the steamboat, they arrive with their wagons or whatever. They get to California, and they're going to go make it rich in the oil field, or sorry, in the gold field. And when they get there, they, of course, they got to have shovel and pick and all these tools and things like this. And so they're going to get there, and they're going to spend all their money, $1,000, to buy stuff. There were laws saying, hey, you can't leave town unless you have at least 200 pounds of food because we don't want you starving and eating your neighbor or something like this, or trying to, cause trouble and stealing from them or whatever, right? And so all this stuff was super expensive. But people didn't care because, you know what? They're going to make all their money by mining gold. The problem is they don't. And most of them are broke. And they end up working for the companies that are making the money. But I tell you who does make money. It's not the miners. Miners don't make the money. It's the people who mine the miners. It's not the people who mine the gold. Let me tell you what I mean by that. All right. I already mentioned the companies that are mining all the gold. All right. They're coming in and they're using the miners, paying them not so great wages, but they're mining the labor of the miners for their profits. Other groups, they didn't necessarily pick up gold. They were the ones, like merchants who were selling all these, $200 shovels. And then when you come home, because you're broke and you want to go home, all that stuff that you paid $1,000 for, they'll give you $50, which is about enough for you to buy a ticket so you can get home. And so they're going to then take that and then turn around and sell it to the next sucker who gets off the boat for $1,000. And so they're making money. And the people who understood this, some of their corporations are still around today. Bank of America, for example, makes money because you got to have a place to put your gold. Merchants, it's a mercantile store. All right, was around for a long time. And one is named after this Swiss immigrant. His father was a tailor, which means he made clothes. Well, see what happens. He gets off the boat and he doesn't have enough money to buy shovels and picks and all these tools, so he's not real sure what he's going to do. And he realizes that the ship that he's on is replacing all the sails because they're kind of battered and beaten and starting to thin out a little bit. And so he makes the captain an offer and says, hey, what are you going to do with all those sails? I don't know. Right? He says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll buy those sails for like $10. Really? Sure, no problem. I'll sell them because he was just going to throw them overboard. And so now he's made $10 and can go have a beer or something like this. And so he's happy. Right? Meanwhile, our little immigrant friend is also happy because he now has all this material. And he had brought with him his father's, he was a tailor by profession, and so he brought with him needles and thread and skills to make clothes. Well, he also went then, and he spent a little bit of money, he bought a bunch of indigo, which is a blue dye. And so, because no one wants to wear stuff that looks like sailcloth, and instead he dyed them blue and turned them into pants. And thus, the blue jeans were invented. All right, now this young guy's name was named Levi Strauss. And Levi Strauss Corporation is still based in San Francisco, California today. And they sell blue jeans and jackets and all things denim all over the world. But it all started because he couldn't afford to buy a shovel. If he had been able to afford to buy a shovel and pick, who knows? We may never have been able to have Buttonfly 501 jeans or any of those other things like that. And it wasn't that he just got lucky. He was smart. He knew what he was doing, and he also went and he made his pants for the miners. All right, he took brass and he reinforced certain points, and he even put this little extra pocket. If you ever wear blue jeans, you ever wonder in the right pocket there's this little small pocket there, and you're like, man, what is up with that? And that is Levi Strauss's invention. That is where the miners would put their pocket watches. For many of them, the pocket watch was one of the very few things that they had any real value, and so they would keep that watch in that extra pocket for a little bit of extra protection. Levi Strauss, like so many others, made a lot of money, but he didn't make it by digging up gold. He made it by mining the miners. Now, why does this matter? We kind of see this pattern today. If there's gold discovered, oftentimes the people making money in Africa off the gold fields or the diamonds or whatever are not the workers. They're the people who own the corporations and the governments that may or may not be honest. Um, in America, we still have gold mine, not a whole lot, but what we do have are oil fields. And every time they open up a new oil field, they discover oil, or they just a new process like fracking, or some way to get more oil out of shale and sand and what have you. Right? Then we see this huge explosion of population in the area. Prices jack up really high. You're paying $600 here in Lamesa, where we have a little bit of a housing crunch because the oil field is doing well, and people are paying $600 a month to live in a shed. Okay, we're talking in actual people went and bought sheds, put a little bit of electricity in there, and they're renting them to people to stay on the edge of town. And we're not doing anything that hasn't already been done 150 years ago. It's just then it was done in California. Now it's done in Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming. All these places, people move there, they get rich. They rarely do. But the people who get rich are the people who understand economics, they understand supply and demand, and they are willing to mine the miners. All right, next time we'll talk about what happens when California decides it wants to become a state, and all the problems that come from that. Until then, have a good evening.